Hi, it's Ileana here, and I'm here today with David Lotherington. He is an Akashic reader, an energy healer. He does Reiki, he does psychic surgery, and much more. David, can you please add in what you do?
Sure. I do a bunch of different stuff, soul reintegration, DNA infusions with my group, uh, which is Galactic Group and all that jazz. I don't usually do medium stuff. This is kind of something that I came forward to help you with some information on, and James Rink as well. So it's not really my jam, but I do a lot of channeling of galactic beings and angelics and things like that for people. And sometimes I help people get in contact with their spirit guides and their higher selves. So yeah, lots of stuff.
Yeah, and you're also a channeler, aren't you?
Yeah. So like I said, like galactics, primarily I'll do galactics, but from time to time I'll dabble in humans.
So today you're going to be channeling Wernher Von Braun. He was a paperclip scientist who came over from Germany to the United States and worked in NASA as well as one of their directors until the 1970s, I believe. So he had also psychically contacted me and told me that he had been associated with the U.S. Navy Army secret space program in the early 1950s. So those would be the type of questions we're asking about Wernher Von Braun today in the channeling, what the association was.
So I should probably say to the audience beforehand what channeling is briefly.
Yes, please.
Channeling is my energy connecting and training halfway and meeting that being that I'm channeling, which is Wernher Von Braun in this case. Now, as our energies entrain, they match halfway, our chakras meet, and then we can communicate with each other through channeling state. So that's through clairaudient and clairvoyantly. So he will be able to control my body and we'll be able to communicate and exchange information back and forth. And I'll be able to give that to you guys.
Perfect. And what is your website?
It is davidlotherington.com.
That's where people.
Lotherington.
Okay, that's where people can find out about all your services and who you are.
Yeah. So I have some packages like mediumship package, or sorry, not mediumship, mentorship package and super soldier packages to help people find their memories, stuff like that. I know you do something very similar.
Yes, I do memory retrieval through remote viewing and through hypnosis and through psychic readings as well. So that's how I retrieve memories for secret space program stuff, ET abductions, contact experiences, that kind of stuff.
And now I do that through the Akashic Records. So I access their information through that way. So we just have different ways of going about doing the same thing, which is really cool.
Yeah, I directly read the person's memories from their soul and their brain. So it's, I guess you could say it's a little bit Akashic Records, but I don't go into the Akashics themselves per se. I go into the person's soul field.
Very cool.
Yeah, so we have different ways of accessing similar information, basically, I think. Yeah. So shall we begin?
We shall. He is here. Oh, he's starting to talk already. Very well. I'll see you guys on the other side, and whatever happens, happens. I'm excited to see what will happen in the end. Very good. Welcome. Very interesting. We are not used to this form of communication, so please just allow us a moment. Greetings, and thank you for having me.
Greetings. You are Wernher Von Braun?
Yes, this is true.
I think I had spoken to you psychically, and you had mentioned that you did have some dealings with the U.S. Navy and Army secret space program.
Yes. this is accurate. We understand that our accent is not perhaps of a German nature, but in this form it is more easy as the channel is not familiar with the tone and inflection of our verbiage.
That's okay. Whatever form you come in through, I understand that the accent might be different than what the original person was because you are on the other side.
Yes, of course, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It is merely an interpretation of the energies which are coming through, which is portrayed onto the person.
Yes. Can you please tell me what was your involvement in the U.S. secret space program? What did you contribute to it?
Well, there were many things that I was a part of. In my exploration upon the planet, I have done many different things and helped many people. Now, there are many forces at play on the planet at this time that were not particularly kind. And some of them were very curious as to my involvement in the particles, physics, and my understanding of how energies worked in these fields. They were interested in this for various reasons. But there are always those who are able to pitch their ideas in ways that are of the light. And those people who are able to do such things can easily manipulate those who have great desire to help those who have good intentions. But underneath the surface, there is more nefarious intent.
Mm-hmm. So when I had been psychically talking to you, you mentioned that you had been coerced with your family, threatened to give your schematics of the anti-gravity circular space orbital platform stations that you had designed to turn it over to the U.S. Military. Can you describe that a little bit?
Yes, there is many technologies of the anti-gravitational format. Now, we will say this because there is many ways to go about doing such a thing. For a long time, this technology has been present and existing naturally within our system of the planet. For example, if you observe a salmon jumping up a stream or river, sometimes the salmon requires energy to propel itself upwards throughout the stream. But at other times, it does not move at all, and yet it finds its way up the next stair, if you wish to say, of the river. Now, this is a form of anti-gravitational pull. This is one of the first original, it is our understanding that it is of the original format of the way that anti-gravitational fields were discovered. But there are also other fields which exist, such as throughout insects that have this energetic field that is of anti-gravitational force.
So how did you design the anti-gravity space orbital platform stations?
Well, it was through an understanding of a friend. He was able to portray information onto me, which was passed down from his collective studies of his lifetime to help me with my journey in my understanding of this gravitational force, which is something that I had to study quite religiously in order to attain such a level of understanding of how it actually worked.
And how did you build it, and how was it put out in space? Because this had been done with the U.S. Navy and Army in the United States. So how was it built and put out into space? Can you please describe your contribution for how that was done?
Yes, I will do as best as I can, but understand this is a very long piece of conversation. So I will have to break it down into components. Now, one must say originally that when one has something that one desires, we would say my information of anti-gravitational technologies. It was desired as it was put out into the world. Now, when the government found out about such understandings, they had great desire to achieve such goal. And through my understanding, they were able to come forward to help me with my studies, through financing, through a place to do my work, through a place to have me discover new inventions through the extension of them. And as a scientist, this is very appealing to come across such a thing. So with our funding, we were able to create new systems. Initially, we were creating small systems of anti-gravitational fields. Now, the fields they can be unstable at times without a stabilizer. Now, we have been using transducting fields of copper interlaid with radiation fields. This would create the anti-gravitational field, a pulse, actually, a repeated pulse that is emitted from the engine, which emits this anti-gravitational field, which is projected outwardly. Now, we had to find a way to control the direction of this field as it was radiating out so much energy, and initially much radiation had occurred within our laboratory. So we had to take great precaution to prevent such energies from penetrating our flesh and things of this nature, as it is of the gamma radiation, much of it. So after we developed the particular miniature versions of the engines, it was required that we were to scale upwards. And with the scaling, we were required many more individuals upon our crew. So we had approximately 40 people at the time that were working with us in this particular step-up laboratory, which was of a greater capacity and had greater machinery to assist us in moving such parts. Now, as we were moving along with the development of the understanding of these fields, we came across many new elemental reactions that would occur within these fields. Now, some of the elements which exist on your periodic table have different radiation factors when they are in these anti-gravitational fields. And because of this, it alters the understanding of what we knew at the time of the fields of the energetic patterns of the materials on the planet. So many scientists broke off at this time while we were studying the anti-gravitation to study such a task, to have a greater understanding of the minerals within the fields. Now, we are doing as best as we can to stay along the lines of your question, as we do not wish to vary too far. But there, as we stated before, it is quite a story to get to where you are in space with your words. Now, how did we get where we were? Well, all things come from small beginnings, you must understand. And in all small things grow. Now, with this growth and development, we were able to achieve an engine. This engine was a great force, and actually it was quite large. It was approximately 10 by 12 feet in measurement. Now, we would say that due to its size, we had to get much help to move it and install it into a craft that was actually created. There was actually a craft already created for this particular engine. Now, we were all quite surprised and very happy to see that someone was able to design such a concept of a vehicle without a propulsionary system and have a very similar understanding of anti-gravitational technologies to be able to integrate our naturally occurring system into that system. So one must understand, in order to build a craft, it is usually based around something. And this engine is what that something was built around. And yet this scientist or group, we will say group of scientists, still had the ability and understanding that they could create a craft around something that did not exist, which was a great task in itself. We know we have not fully addressed the question, but we understand that there must be other questions.
So how How did the transition happen between the engine and the craft into building out a huge orbital space station platform orbiting the moon, between the moon and the Earth?
We would have to say step by step. As once this craft was created, there was much exploration over, we would say, 6 months' time. Now, it was a greatly accelerated process as we had unlimited resources and unlimited monies, which were not required for us actually at the time. And we had unlimited hands that we needed. Now, many of the people were tested through radiation, as many pilots died in the initial testing. We had to install much radiation shielding, which was installed at later time due to the elemental compositions that we stated before of the antigravitational fields. Now, once the engine was placed within the system of the craft, it caused many of the elements within the craft to act unnaturally, to act in a way that was not natural to the natural composition of the metals and things that were already existing within the craft. So any pre-existing copper wiring that was existing within the craft was caused to project its own miniature fields. And this caused much disruption within the rest of the ship. So we had to fine-tune many, many things. And it's unfortunate the loss of life that had occurred. But we will continue forward. Once this craft was attuned properly to the configurations of the engine, we were able to explore. Now, this was out of my hands at the time. I am not a pilot in this regard, although my understandings of flight and trajectory and things of this nature are sufficient. But my ability to fly such things would be limited. Now, there was many test flights, and in the test flights, we had some close calls, as the gravitational fields of the planets we did not account for. In our understanding of these gravitational fields, one must understand that the Earth's gravitational fields are not stable. They are fluctuating continuously. The ionosphere is continuously throwing and bombarding us with fields of ionic disruption and things that affect craft in a quantum way. Now, once these fields are compensated for and trajectory is aligned with the gravitational waves of the planet, which are inconsistent, then one is able to move beyond particular fields which exist naturally that occur on the planet. And in such a way, we were able to reach a threshold of the planet where we were able to leave the atmosphere, which was a great accomplishment at the time. Now, moving forward, things have accelerated, and there were many crafts being created at the same time. Once our craft had its bumps and grinds all fixed, we would say, this template was copied and multiplied. And there were other scientists across the planet, from Russia to China to parts of America and even parts of Brazil, that were creating similar engines with the same blueprint. And because of this, well, they also have great scientists which would incorporate their own new designs. But for the most part, the general understanding was the same. And in this understanding, they came together, and we were required to step aside once the understanding was great enough to allow another group of individuals who had greater understanding of the space itself. A new science was required to be created to help us with our understanding, so we could assimilate that knowledge and apply it to the new fields that would be destabilized within space, because the fields of space are different than the fields of the planet.
Mm-hmm. So how did all of that contribute to building a huge orbital space station platform? What was your contribution? How was that done?
Well, as stated before, we had some parts in the antigravitational field. Now, this field is something of our legacy. It is something that is still used today. And although there are alternate forms of antigravitation, such as a new red mineral, such as there are approximately 4 different ways that I was aware of that one can produce antigravity. And my component that I gave towards this understanding of the ship was my gift of knowledge and collection and assimilation, and the ability to put it together into one piece so that one can understand and multiply it.
So from that schematics of building the ship, it went further to building the first modular circular space orbital platform?
Well, there are many things that one must know in order to build such a thing. But the most important component, once one obtains the anti-gravitational fields and we would say lifters, it is quite simple to build a platform and a vessel that can contain bodies and materials and things of this nature. Each system which is created, like a microwave, it is one piece of technology, but when it is incorporated within another system of technologies, it is able to do its one specific individualized part. Now, humans have been creating large craft for some time, on the seas, for example, and others that you do not know of, perhaps. But we are referring to the inner Earth craft that exist. Now, there are, so humans have a great understanding of how to build craft already. Now, it was only required that they have a means and way to lift such craft in order to incorporate that to create a base.
So by understanding how to build these craft, then you were able to build a large space station that could orbit a planet, like between Earth and the moon.
Yes. So there were, we would say that initially humanity was not at a stage where it was ready to be communicated with to such a degree until it reached a level of technology which was able to achieve space-faring society. Now, once we were able to create a space-faring ship which could sustain space living situations, we are not referring to the space station that exists. We are referring to an anti-gravitational means to move within space that is not in alignment with the fields of the solar system, which naturally occur. Then we were able to take on new knowledge and information, and we were able to be assisted more by those who wish to help us already. Now, with their assistance, we were able to make leaps and bounds in our understanding of the physics of space itself, as space is much different than we will say some NASA scientists know, and Tesla, this Elon Musk character as well.
Mm-hmm. And how many of these orbital space station platforms were built?
There were 3 built at the time which I was alive. Now, I did not live for a very long time, but for my generation, it was a very good life.
Were you able to travel out in space and visit these space station orbital platforms?
Only later in my life was I able to do such things, as I was not permitted to have clearance to do such things. But when the technology was stabilized, the radiation fields were fixed, and our understanding of space was at a greater level, several years later, perhaps 7 7 or 8 years after we finished the engine. Then I was able to go onto one of these craft to appreciate the construction and design and work that was put into them.
And how much people could one of these orbital space station platforms house to be on it?
Do you mean sustainably?
Yes.
Well, that depends on the craft. There are 3 models. The third would be the largest and the most advanced. Now, the first craft was not that large. We would say approximately 1,500 people could fit on the ship sustainably. Now, there was always visitors moving on and off craft. Approximately 20 non-terrestrial species would come and join our crew and help with particular systems of the craft at a time, as there was security issues if there was too many, because some races are able to shapeshift, and these were always curious interactions that we had with individuals on the ship. So, but some of the larger ships, the second craft was able to hold about 4,200 individuals, and the third was about able to hold 10,000, roughly, of course.
And the space station that you had been in the last 7 years, how many people could that sustainably hold?
It was not, it was one of the earlier model ships, one must understand, and because of this, it was approximately 4,000 people or something of this nature. It was a great, massive creation, and to comprehend such vastness of technology, it is a beautiful sight to see.
Has that now been upgraded to hold more people, and the space stations have been improved?
Yes, many times over. And although I have been observing from afar, as my curiosity takes the best of me at times in spirit, but it is good to understand that humans are taking a more positive form of development in space. They are negotiating, they are trading, they are expanding their engineering understanding of the laws of physics, which are universal in nature, rather than planetary physics, which is a completely different field.
And you also had helped to design modular underground bases on the moon. How was that done, and what was your contribution towards that in the 1950s to the 1970s?
Well, unfortunately, I was not able to leave planet for some of this time. And although my curiosity had gotten the best of me, I was not able to go to such places until particular, you would say, environmental factors were taken into account for. Now, there were already naturally occurring bases on the moon, as it is an observatory of many species. It is a leased platform, one might say, and we do not want to say to support flat earthers by saying platform. We would say it is a spherical body of land that can sustain many systems of beings. And if you imagine a pie slice, the back of the moon is segregated into many different areas, and these areas each have individual designations which are associated with particular races. The moon is something of a neutral zone. But we would say it is segregated into slices, and in these slices there are different races which are choosing to observe humanity from a distance. And through this observation they find many different things. Now, through a slice of the reptilian collective, we would say. We say reptilian collective because we do not mean it was only owned by a particular reptilian race, but it was owned by several races of the reptilian association. And we would say many different species of reptilian would come to this slice of pie at one time. And because of this, they had lent us some portion of their slice, as was able to be done. We could not have our own slice of the pie, but we could borrow one slice. Now, with this knowledge, with this building that was created already, there was much structure that was already created within the moon. Now, the system of the moon, there are many interesting variables upon the planet of the moon and amongst the internals of the moon. There are many beings inside the moon which also share space, and many of these spaces overlap in themselves. When one is, I can say, because I was at one time in the presence of these beings, and in their presence, you can feel them reading your energies, you can feel their intentions upon you, you can feel many interesting variables which one may not experience on the planet. And through borrowing technologies which existed from the reptilian species, which are biologically quite similar to ourselves, as they breathe oxygen, as they require fluids, water, and things of this nature, we were able to live in a similar system which could sustain human life. Now, with this synergization of collective knowledges from the Saurian people and amongst the human population, there are other reptilian races which were also included, as the Thuban were as well. But it is important to state for the record that they were very helpful in our advancement of technology. And because of this, we were able to make leaps and bounds forward, we would say centuries worth of work in only a year's time.
So you were able to build out circular modular bases underground on the moon?
Yes, many of the resources of that were required to create craft, we would say, in an inner layer of the moon. It is not like a honeycomb. It is like it contains a centralized sphere. And surrounding the sphere, there is a membrane of stone and elements. And exterior from that is an empty chasm that surrounds the core of the planet, which adjoins it by several pillars, which are very massive in size, which provide as natural dividers between species and races. Now, because the internal system of the planet is larger than one might think, many species are able to overlap on the core of the planet. And we understand we are tangenting, going on a tangent, yes. But we will say this because many humans are curious, as the system of the moon is a curious thing. So, regarding the materials required to build a craft, we would say that many Thuban were able to help us to teleport, which is an oscillation of the vibrational shift between materials to one place to another, was able to be satisfied for our constructors. These are people who had understanding of ship building and things of this nature, and were able to put the craft together with the resources at hand. But the resources were created upon the planet.
But what about bases, not just craft? How were their bases built out on the moon for the US Navy and Army?
So, as we stated before, it was required that we had life support systems created by the Saurian people. They were able to assist us in our initial footprints upon the planet. Now, initially, if you imagine the reptilian slice was approximately 7% of the moon, of the dark side. we would say we had approximately 2% of their 7%. Now, this is not a large amount of space. It was quite small for what our dreams were, as we wanted our own slice to build a base. But because we've seen this planet as this moon as our own, but our scientists, our politics, our politicians, we should say, had to come to the understanding that we are not the largest fish in the sea. And with this understanding, we accepted this small percentage of slice, knowing that it is what we could get at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to use this 2% of land of 7% to create the initial bases. And again, we were assisted with the technologies of the Thuban.
And what did these bases look like? Were they underground?
Yes, they were initially proposed underground, as this protects us from many things that naturally occur in space. Space is a very curious thing, and at the time we did not have a great understanding of it. And because of our lack of understanding of space and what we have heard from other races, we chose to build underground, as the fields of radiation are very unstable in space. Now, one must admire the fields that surround Earth, our atmosphere, and the different layers of atmosphere which exist upon the planet, and radiation, which naturally occurs upon the planet, which resists other forms of radiation that exist naturally in space. Natural radiation which exists in space can cause havoc on the system. It is far worse than gamma radiation. It is far worse than any form of radiation that exists upon the planet. But because of the emission of radiation from Earth, it is nullified. And it creates a field which gives you security and safety. So it was required that we were to move inside of the planet to resist such initial bombardment, as the planet itself, we would say the moon, has minerals which resist such radiation. So it makes it a very viable place and a good location, as it also protects us from asteroids and other things that are debris in space.
So what did these underground bases look like?
Well, initially we started with a dome formation. It was a flat disk platform with a force field going across the top. This was chosen for several reasons. The disk can always be expanded. Another ring can be placed upon a disk. And with this additional ring, it can grow in diameter. Now, several of these rings were placed upon our base initially to allow in the expansion of this base. And because the dome which existed above us, we would say above us, but surrounded us and protected us from radiation and sustained our environment, which we were a part of, this was energy. And this energetic field could be changed and manipulated to fit the range which existed within the diameter of the circle which we were built upon. Does this make sense?
So yes, so inside the dome is like an electromagnetic field, and inside the dome there's structures, like physical structures.
Yes, humans tend to build like humans. So for a period of time, we were building buildings that looked something like skyscrapers, but they were not so tall, approximately 4 stories high initially, as we had many people that were required to do such building. And they had to have particular amenities to retain their humanities. So it was required that they were taken care of properly. And with the jarring experience of the Thuban race, it was sometimes required that they have forms of escape to be able to have their mind, you would say.
And how did the building out of the basis advance over time? What changed?
This is a good question. Now, as we were located on the moon, as we mentioned before, there were many species that were interconnected on the inner spheres of the planet. We'll call it a planet, as it is more of a planet than a dead body, when one truly understands the nature of the system. And as it does contain flora and fauna, which are experienced not just on the inner Earth, but also on the exterior in smaller formats. Now, as we stated before, there are individual species who were inside the moon. Now, their natural curiosity drew themselves towards us, and us to them, as humans are curious beings. So as we began to grow, our system began to gain awareness. And in this awareness, there were those who wished to say hello and discover the human up close rather than from an observatory perspective. Now, many scientists from many different species came to visit us from time to time during the allowed periods of time which they were allowed to visit, which was very limited as we had much work to do, and sometimes particular races can disrupt the human psyche from the very presence. Do not want to get too complicated into this, but there are particular races which have fields that surround them, and not just telepathic fields or etheric fields, but other fields. And these fields can disrupt the natural biorhythms of humanity, which can cause disruption within us. And this was found out early on, as some of the individuals which were living upon the platform would get sick in different ways when near new species. And initially we thought it was a virus or perhaps a bacteria, but it was merely the energy emitted by the beings which was disruptive to our particular field, as we are not harmonized to the understanding of their energetic auras, we will say.
So how did this change the building of the basis?
Yes, we lost track of the question. We apologize. Now, with their understanding of, we will say, dust, with their understanding of shapes and geometry, we were able to apply this to our understanding of housing. Now, initially, humans would build their structures in rectangular, square shapes. But we came to understand that there are better designs than this. So we had several designs of buildings that we chose to create after the understanding of geometry from other races. Many of these designs were circular in nature, spherical, and this prevented the collection of dust from skin particles and things like this. So it was not actually required to sweep and clean up such areas that were properly geometrically shaped. Other shapes were, well, if you imagine a thumbnail crescent of the moon, and then cut that in half, that is perhaps the best explanation of how we can name this design of building. This was another design that we had created shortly after the spherical dome.
Mm-hmm. Does the moon have world engines that move it?
We were not able to partake in the understanding of this, but we were aware of the fields that were emitted by the planetary core. Now, I believe there is an engine that exists within the planet, but I was not able to attain such information in my life. But we knew that there was some force driving it, and it was always something that was somewhat hidden from us, as we are the ones being observed, to keep us somewhat unknown, to keep some variables unknown, as if you are a monkey in a cage, you may not want to know how the zoo works exactly. But we apologize for such a primitive example, and we do not want to say you are monkeys or anything of this nature, but we are definitely being observed by higher species, and we will say higher because they are more conscious, not because they are above us.
And when you were working in your capacity at NASA and also throughout your throughout living in the United States, had you ever met President Kennedy?
Well, yes. He has had some interaction with those on the base, coming to visit from time to time. He was not able to go to all areas of development, but craft development is something that presidents are able to access. They may not be able to speak to individual species of non-terrestrials, but they are able to visit different craft that are under construction.
So President Kennedy was able to visit the moon?
We cannot say that he was able to go to such places, but we can say that he was able to see such craft which had attained the ability to reach the moon.
Okay, and was he a friend to you, President Kennedy?
Not personally. He would be someone of a celebrity status that would come and would say hello and wave and shake hands and things of this nature, just to show his face, one might say, but he was not involved in any way that we were aware of.
How much was he aware of the US Navy and Army secret space program and what was going on?
That is not of my knowledge. And had I known more, I would say more, but unfortunately, you would have to ask him such questions.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to discuss that was important in your career on Earth that pertained to the secret space programs or anything else that you achieved?
Well, there were many things that have happened in my life, and there are many things I am proud of, like my children and their children and their children. And I believe this is my greatest creation which I have ever made. It seems perhaps a silly thing to think such a thing, but the creation of organics is much more complex than the systems of a ship or craft. And this is the true beauty of design, when one can understand that humanity can hold such beauty within itself, and yet we can create things of equal beauty. This is a truly beautiful thing. Now, my desire is to say thank you for all those who have supported me on my journey, for those who have helped me upon my path to understanding of things that are greater than this planet. And yes, I say hello to my family, and I love them very, very much.
Had you ever been able to contribute to building the bases out on Mars?
No, this was outside of my reach, one might say. My understanding of space was not to a place where one could move to in one lifetime. Understand that there are generations of limitation which exist within the human understanding. And because of my age, because of my understanding that already pre-existed scientifically, I was limited by my earlier understandings of physics. So those who helped take part in the designation of Mars, they would have pre-designation of creation upon the moon, and they may have been born there as well. So they are born with the initial understanding of physics of space, and as they grew and developed, they knew the systems which exist around them already. Now, this was not something that I was able to partake in, as I was conditioned upon the planet Earth rather than the moon.
Mm-hmm. And while working for NASA, JPL, and other secret projects, were you reverse engineering extraterrestrial spacecraft?
Most of the information that I was reverse engineering had already been done. It had been retrofitted and reassimilated many times before it had reached me. My part was in building of the anti-gravitational field and the engine. But there was other scientists who were responsible for the reverse engineering of such engines so that it could be within the grasp of human understanding to recreate it.
Okay, so other extraterrestrial craft had already been reverse engineered and you were just building upon that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming in and answering our questions. We thank you very much for your help today, and it was lovely talking to you.
Thank you very much for having me, and it is wonderful to be in the presence of humanity once again. Know that there are many things coming for the planet, and in Earth's alignment at this time, there are many fields that are causing disruptions to particular individuals. Now, some of you may be affected by these fields which are happening upon the planet, and some of you may not be. But know that these fields are advantageous for the development of humanity's consciousness. And as they move forward in development, they will increase the oscillations. And as they do so, it will rapidly increase the awareness of humanity. So this is a blessing, not a curse, although it may feel like a curse for some of you. Now, this is all we wish to say for now. Thank you for having us. We are very happy to be here, and we will make time to speak to one or perhaps yourself in the future, so that more information may come forward to help humanity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Von Braun, and I appreciate your kindness and sharing this information with us today.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Hey.
Hello, that was interesting.
Just give me a sec. Okay, cool.
So Von Braun was definitely involved with the secret space program stuff.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, discussed the moon a lot, bases, ships. I asked some of the James Rink questions about President Kennedy, and he answered no, he wasn't friends with him. He just knew him from just general stuff, but not close. So I asked some, yeah, I asked some of James's questions. But yeah, it was fascinating. I think that you should reconsider sometimes channeling dead people.
We'll see. Like my happy place is when I can communicate with other races, because I believe that they bring a different type of knowledge, and there's lots of mediums out there which can help with this.
Yeah, but Earth's history, the moon's history, dead people have a lot of information on the secret space program and what happens of our Earth history. So I believe it's like part of, it's like the missing links that nobody discusses.
That's true. Well, perhaps in the future.
Yeah, well, Michael Ralph is still on the wish list. And I still have you too. Yes, like sure. I see you doing, like, it just resonates. These three people, Von Braun, Michael Ralph, and William Tompkins, it just resonates as you. Like, you just have this affinity to bring them in and to allow them to speak and bring in the information as it's supposed to flow. Just something about your field resonance that resonates with these three individuals.
You're really rubbing me in a nice way, and my ego appreciates that. But we'll just have to save that for another time, I believe.
Yeah, down the road, maybe. We'll see. But I appreciate you bringing in Von Braun today, and he had a lot of interesting things to say. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for that. Okay.
Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to hear about another being in the future, just write it in the comments below. Check out my YouTube. I have a couple of videos on channeling there. So
Vote for Michael Rolfe, please. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.